Hello, welcome back. My name is Greg, Soul Searching Gaijin, that's me. Today's video is going to be just a talk, no music today, but it's all about the philosophy of how I went about creating my live set, and a lot of, I guess, I don't know, tips or tricks or just things that I've learned along the way that really could help speed your process along. I learned the hard way, believe me. A few months back, I just decided I want to perform live, and I just dove right into it. And any of you who have been following me have seen me go through many iterations of what has now become something I'm very comfortable with, my live rig. And I've tried many different scenarios, and I learned a lot of lessons along the way. One of the first ones I learned in my first few iterations were size. I got really excited and I was like, oh, I'm going to put this in there, put that in there, and go. I'm going to be able to do everything. And not only did it weigh a ton, and it was huge, but it was really difficult to handle that much equipment. And it took me quite a long time to really realize that, and I kept scaling down, trying different pieces, and I finally feel really comfortable with what I have. It's a manageable size. I have a little dolly that I can pull things on, but I didn't really think it out in the beginning. I just dove right in. In this whole process, I've done the same thing. So I'm going to try to help you keep from making the same mistakes that I did. So once I actually worked my way into the scene a little bit and got the opportunity to play live and had a couple shows lined up, I got really excited and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna I can't wait to go home and make some music, and I just worked really, I think that's what most people are gonna do. You're just gonna okay, turn your equipment on and start creating. I gave really no thought to organization, and I touched on this in my last video, the importance of having a template. That was something I learned a few weeks back. But what really happened was I was creating a bunch of different, not a ton, but a bunch of different music, right? And I was, as I always do, I kind of go by feel, and I would tend to, in one pattern, just have kind of somewhat conflicting ideas. I just tried to put too much into one pattern. I would have a few things muted and be like, okay, I need to have something else to kind of jump to, and next thing you know, it would be kind of in the same key or kind of a similar key, but not exactly the same. And when I was in the moment jumping around, I was like, yo, this is great. But then when I actually tried to play over top of it, it just became a nightmare. So really the past few weeks, actually the past month, I've just been doing almost a month now since the first show that I played. I've been doing so much reconfiguring and just cleaning up my process and learning so much in that process. So as I said, the first thing that you get excited, you want to create a bunch of music. And then I would go back and I'd be like, okay, well, I did all this stuff last night. Today, I'm going to go through and practice flowing through a set. And as I'm going, all these issues pop up because of the way I worked. I can't remember what's on what track. I just didn't really keep good notes. I was a little all over the place, wasn't sure what key I was in, didn't have my levels right from pattern to pattern or idea to idea even. And I found that I would get really frustrated because I would sit down with the intent of working on the set, learning how to maneuver through the set. And very quickly, I would have to stop so often to fix issues that I had in the way that I worked when I created everything. And this really took me out of the flow, and it's really taken me like quite a few weeks to go back in, clean up everything, and to learn the lesson that, and this is the big lesson right here, is that every time you sit down for a studio session or to work, it doesn't need to be, you need to really figure out what your goals are for that session. I almost always want to sit down and practice the set, do the fun stuff, get through, just see what it's going to sound like all put together. And there's a lot that goes into that at first. And like I said, I worked relatively sloppy. So as I was trying to do this, I would have to stop and fix things, and it got me really frustrated, and I could not really catch a flow. And so I tend to feel quite defeated, because I was like, am I ever going to be able to do this? God, none of this shit works right. And probably about a week ago, I just kind of came to this realization that, you know what? Before I even go any further, let me just clean everything up. Let me take a few days, a week, as it turned out to be, just to really cycle from one pattern to the next, from one idea to the next, play them all together, play them in different scenarios, and see what stood out and what didn't really fit. And I ended up having to transpose some ideas. I had to really find out what key I was working in and just kind of memorize some key patterns within those keys, because I tried to push myself and work outside of A minor, which if you've heard me, I do that all the time. So I'm in some different keys and things that I'm not so comfortable or used to playing, and some of which I've never really played in before. So there's a lot of learning, as well as figuring out how to jump through everything. So I think the point I'm trying to make is my sessions lately have been engineering or production sessions, workflow sessions, not necessarily creative as much as more functional. How am I going to, is everything working the way I need it to work? Is there an easier way for me to hook this up so I can make these moves, these transitions easier? Hence, I started breaking stuff out into patterns as opposed to one big pattern. That was last week's video. And also, just dialing in the key that I'm going to be playing in. I am using this Micro Freak here, Mini Freak from Arturia, really, really nice. But over here, behind me, if you can see it, is the Soma Labs Terra. And this has been in and out of my setup a few times. But I have to say it's probably my favorite instrument. And the one thing is there's only a handful of, there's 12 notes over here that you can play, but I had to learn how to basically how to program each one of these notes to be what exactly I wanted them to, and to create my own scale with them that fits with the music. And sometimes I'm omitting certain notes and I'm just doing more of like a pentatonic type thing, a few octaves with an extra note here or there. But what I really like about it is it gives me a lot of flexibility, because I'm a drummer, and though the keys are great and I really love them, this instrument here is very expressive. Can be played, you can play chords, you can do melodies on it, and you can also play it kind of like a drummer, which is really, really nice. So I've had to take time to create presets in this that jive with each one of my patterns, tuning-wise. And, all that stuff, it seems pretty easy, but if you're trying to do that in the midst of trying to create music, it'll really take you out of the flow. So the past week or so, I have been just really cleaning house and trying to organize. And I'm at a point where I feel really comfortable as I'm playing through the different patterns in the set. Things are just like, now that everything's kind of clean and makes sense and all my levels are nice and steady, I just feel like I can flow from one idea to the next. And since I'm not worried about like, oh, that sound came in a little too loud or something, I'm literally a lot more in the flow and can do what I really wanted to do with performing live, which is kind of not be a bedroom producer and be more of a live performer. and be able to rely, as a drummer, mainly, I mean, I guess you can memorize what you're doing, but I was always a field player, and I made it through 3 years of music school, never graduated, but I made it through without ever being able to learn how to sight read music, because I always had I had a pretty good ear and a really natural good feel. And so that's a strength that I realize that I have. So in order to utilize that, I don't need to be distracted by the technical things. Like I said, in my past, I was an engineer and still love doing engineering and production and all that, but at the same time, it's a different mindset. Now, at this point in my life, I really want to focus on being a live musician and playing live. And since I don't have a drum set, because I really can't make that kind of noise in the past 2 decades of everywhere I've lived, I have to do it on a different instrument. And it kind of takes the best of both worlds for me. Everything that I really like and the strengths I have on the big studio gear, and applies it in a real-time environment. But in order to flow in that environment, everything needs to be really figured out before you start to try to, I don't want to say create, because like I said, creating music is different than practicing your live set. So I guess maybe this is what I'm trying to get at. I would say you have to look at it in stages. And I did not do this. I jumped all over the place, way ahead, before I went back to square one to sort everything out. But I would say in the beginning, make yourself a template, create your sounds, take a few days to, if you're using a sampler, take a few days to find the sounds you'd like. Create your own palette, something that's personalized, that you feel good about, that you really like. So you're not just searching for some crazy presets. There are things that you know you like. Load them into your sampler, create your palette, and limit yourself, because when you have so many possibilities with all of this gear, which I learn almost every time I sit down with it, limitations they spark creativity, because within it just takes one less thing out of your mind. If you're like, I have these sounds to work with, and this is what I'm going to go with, and I'm going to make this work for me. And so, like I said in the beginning, create your template, get your sounds, get them loaded in there. If you're using something that's not a sampler, find the presets you like, tweak them to your own liking, save them as your own if you're so inclined, or just find presets you like and just make a bank where everything is easily accessible. You know where it is, you know how to get to it. You don't have to search for a bass sound, you don't have to search for the perfect kick drum. Just give yourself a handful of options, like I said. That's the first thing. Then I would say, secondly, what are you trying to do? For me, I've kind of found my way into, kind of very luckily, into kind of like the experimental Japanese music scene. And I don't want to say that what I'm doing is experimental, because it really isn't. I mean, but at the same time, it's not house music, it's not club music. And I am not trying to be any of that. I am literally allowing myself to do what I feel and what I enjoy, without really worrying about what the audience is going to be like. I've seen a lot of music in the past few months, and on any given show, it's all over the place, from crazy hardcore bands to like experimental clicky music to total ambient drones, all over. And the music scene is amazing here in Japan. I mean, people are just really open to a lot. And I think in that sense, I'm really lucky, because I'm not trying to fit into any one thing. I'm just trying to find my voice, really. So I think you have to understand what you're going for, and are you trying to play in a club? If so, you should probably be making that type of music. For me, I just want to get in front of people. So, and the venues that I'm targeting are small, which is fine for me. I just want to hone my skills in front of an audience and get my music heard. And smaller audiences for me allow me to actually communicate with some of the people who see the show and to make some connections, which is, I mean, it's really nice, to tell you the truth. A lot of options, things, opportunities open up once you kind of put yourself out there and meet some people. So that would be the first couple. Set yourself up before you even start to work. Think about what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and then figure out what pieces of equipment you're going to use. I would definitely consider smaller is better, even though to me this is the smallest rig I've been able to come up with. It's still quite large, and I need a little hand truck to not kill myself, to carry it around. And I've seen people go do some amazing shows with only a handful of gear, and then I've seen other people take 3 times the amount that I have. So I would consider, how long is it going to take you to set this up on stage? That's another thing. I have this in this really nice case with everything Velcroed down and zip tied and wired nice and neat and tight. So this entire package here is one unit. I just have the keyboard, which I have a few plugs, and this guy over here, the Somatera, that fits right inside the front sleeve of this bag right here. So I really only have two bags that I'm taking with me. And that's it. And it's really nice because, like I said, almost everything's pre-wired, and it's really, really simple for me. So I can be set up and break down in a very short period of time, which is nice. So that gives me time to bring a set of headphones, and I can do a nice little sound check, quiet, private from everybody, make sure everything's working. Since I am using an iPad over here, which is about a month, 6 weeks new to my setup, I'm still a little cautious because I'm always worried about computers glitching, and from time to time I do have some issues with this guy. So I have to make sure everything's working properly and communicating properly before I hit play, because once I do, there's no stopping, right? So, okay, so that's the next thing. You know, portability, setting things up. Just try to keep it small if you can. I could probably get away with a little bit less gear, but for what my vision of what I want to do, I think this is just the right amount. It's enough for me to handle. Any more, and I find I get too tripped up. There's too many things to think about. And even this for me is quite complex. But I kind of like that. That's just kind of the way I am and the way I think. Then the next thing, when it comes to creating, okay, so you have your template set up, you have your rig set up, you have an idea of what you want to do. Then next, I would say, when you do start to write, work really methodically. And as you're working, be cognizant of how things are going to flow, how you lay things out. Don't have different sounds on different tracks. Try to stick within your palette on the same track. So as you flip through your patterns, you know what's where. You don't have to do a lot of memorization, because once you're on stage and you're in front of people and that adrenaline gets going, everything you thought you knew just all of a sudden goes out the door, and you really have to rely on muscle memory, feel, and confidence. How much time you put in, how much practice. And I learned that the hard way with my last show, because I really did not have enough time to prepare, and I thought I would be fine, because in my YouTube videos of performing just on a camera, I found it a lot easier than it was in front of people. That extra element really adds something, an excitement, but at the same time, there's a distraction. So don't just think that you got it. Because if that's where you're at, you kind of need to know that you got it. So once you get your ideas together, I would really go through one section at a time, one pattern at a time, flowing from one to the next, and really just take a session or 2 or 3, however many it takes, to get everything nice and even volume-wise, to For me, I'm using AUM, so I have a master fader, if you will, a main, where I have some EQing, some final compression or like mastering type plugins put on there to really get the sound the way I want it to, and also give me some options that I can quickly pull that up and like dip out a little frequency that may be a little overwhelming in the room, because you don't know what the sound system's going to sound like. So you need to be able to adjust kind of on the fly. So it's nice to have an EQ on your master fader setup or some type of way to EQ your whole mix quickly. And you don't have to go crazy with it, but you may just need to pull out one frequency. Something on any one instrument may just kind of be overblown due to the acoustics of the room. So take a day or two to kind of sort out and balance everything in your set. Make sure you know what keys you're in. Take any notes that you have to. And then after you've created everything and you've balanced everything, then and only then wear the cap of the arranger and figure out how you're going to get through the set, how it's going to progress, how quickly it needs to move, what are the moves that you need to memorize and to make, what are going to be your transitions, what are going to be the tricky transitions. I've found that the hard way, where I'm like, okay, I'm playing this sound over here and I want to fade this down over here, but yet I got to reach over here and I want to change my patterns, but yet I want to do this real smoothly, and at the same time I want to sweep this in transition. There's only so many hands you have and so many moves you can make, so you have to kind of make some choices. And you won't learn all of that until you get to that phase where you're literally working on the final presentation of your set and how it's all going to go out. And like I said, I found in the past few weeks, it's taken me much longer than I wanted to get to this point, just because I wasn't working smart. I was all over the place. I was letting my excitement get to me and doing all the fun stuff and kind of avoiding the work of cleaning everything up. And by trying to slog through where I was with all the little inconsistencies, like I said, I got really frustrated and I kind of got a little downtrodden. I was like, dude, you're never going to be able to pull this off like this. Oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. How many months is it going to take you till you get this? And then I just had to really sit back and think and just go back to square one. I had the ideas in there. I just had to clean it up and make everything, just tweak it so everything sat really nice with one another. And any of the issues that were popping up, I dealt with them. So now I'm at a point where I can really just focus. Only in the last day or two, probably last night, I just finished, and actually even this morning, I just finished checking and doing some presets on the Somatera to make sure everything's in a really nice key with what's going on here. I did some transposing of some patterns. So as I'm switching from one pattern to the next, I have actually 3 patterns, 3 ideas, and they're all in slightly different keys. And when I was creating them, I had some patterns coming out of AUM that could almost play from one idea to the next. And I thought that was great until I realized that, like, what is that one note's driving me crazy. And so I really had to go in and clean things up and commit and just be like, okay, this is what I'm going to use to get from here to there. This pattern is just for this idea, and just make those hard choices. And like I said, really just kind of do the work to clean everything up and make it sound nice and polished. So I'm at the point where it's about arranging. And what I like about having done this whole process is I know where everything's at, because I've spent so much time working on just cleaning it up and arranging it and putting it where it belongs, that I really feel confident that I'm going to be able to do a little bit of improvisation. Because everything I'm doing on the Somatera There are a few ideas, but I'm not, when it comes to me playing on whether it's the keyboard or the Somatera over here, all that is improv. And I have the Terra set up so as long as I'm on the right preset for the right pattern, each pattern has its own preset, I can't hit a wrong note. So I can really, just knowing I can't hit a wrong note allows me to really be free over here and explore and improvise. And the fact that I know that all of these patterns flow really nicely from one to the other, and I can go to from my beginning intro pattern all the way through to the build up to the outro, and then if I want to keep going, I can jump from my outro right back into a higher energy part a few patterns back, and it flows nice. So I can go forward and I can go backwards in my groups of patterns for one initial idea, and they all flow really good. So that gives me the ability to raise the energy, drop the energy. If the idea is going well, I feel comfortable and I want to keep going, add a different sound. I can maybe come over here on the keyboard and then bring in that other build-up pattern again and then just kind of go right back into it, but with a different top. And that's given me a lot of confidence, a lot of confidence. So, and I think that's really the important thing is you want to go into a show feeling good. You want to know your stuff because like I said before, there's always something that's going to happen, something that's unexpected, and you kind of have to flow with that. And as those things came up in my last show, they really kind of took me out and didn't ruin everything, but it just really, I lost the flow and I had a hard time finding it again. So I don't want that to happen next show. I want it to be a lot smoother, a lot more professional, a lot more polished. Does not have to be perfect. I do want to allow myself some room for improvising, and the way I work, things will never be completely memorized. I just don't work like that as a drummer. I always kind of go by feel. But I want to have as much thought out as possible so I kind of know what to expect when I hit a button. And it's just a matter of when and why I choose to hit that button. So as opposed to just wildly like, oh my God, I need to create a change, let's just change some shit. I know what I can do to create different levels of energy, and I won't get lost. I really won't get lost. So I think that's probably it for today. I really want to create some music for you guys doing this streaming thing or doing this just live video thing. But my next show is in 2 weeks. And as much as I love YouTube, it's more important to me that I really spend the time focusing on this show. Not saying I'm not going to do a video, but it is definitely taking a backseat. As you can probably tell for the past month, I haven't been nearly as productive as I was previous, and I really haven't put any music performances on here. I don't really want to videotape me practicing a set. I don't necessarily think that's going to be of any real huge value to you. I just think if you listen to the last video, you can hear the patterns that I'm using. That really hasn't changed. They've just been refined a little bit more over the past week. I think it would be more valuable to check it out in a couple weeks after the show when I post the finished product, and you can kind of see, like, hopefully see everything that I was talking about put into action and see the results of working this way. It will only be the second show that I've ever done. The first one, oh my God, I'm glad I did it, but I really didn't do so well, and I want to do much better on this one. I want it to be a completely different experience. And then I'm excited for what's to come after, because this is just the first time I'm creating something for a live performance. And I'm really excited with what I've learned in just these first few pieces of music. I love to create. I just want to make new stuff. But at the same time, I'm not moving on until I have mastered this set, or at least to the point where I have one in the bag that I can always fall back on. And then I can start working on something a little bit different. Like I said, as an artist, it's always the first thing that you want to do is just create. But I think it is important to rein that in a little bit and make sure that you do the homework. So when you do get in front of people, it is a good experience for them and for you. I think if you can learn to work that way and instill a bit of discipline into your workflow, it doesn't have to be work. I mean, I really enjoy every aspect of it, but I am separating it into different sessions. I'm not trying to do everything in one session. It becomes too chaotic. It's much better to sit down and have like, today's a sampling session. I'm going to create sounds. Tomorrow is a writing session. The next day is a mixing section. Next day is an organizing section. Session. And then lastly is the practice. And that's where all of your hard work pays off, because that's when you can really sit back and enjoy the fruits of your labor. And I've been having a great time, even though it's still every day getting a little bit more refined. The closer I get to being really happy with where things are at, the more enjoyable the practice part of it is. I just find myself like being like, yo, dude, that's gonna be great. And that's such a nice feeling, because normally I only get that when I create the music. I don't necessarily, the other parts after the initial creation, which is always such a rush, becomes work. But for me, it's kind of like I've been putting the work in the beginning. And since I put enough of it in there, the back end is more rewarding, very, very rewarding, and confidence building. So, all right, y'all, I hope you learned something from this. Don't quite know what the next video is going to be about. There's a lot of things I learned I want to kind of teach you, like setting up the fader Fox with AUM. There's a lot of stuff with AUM. A lot of things I learned on the Digitone boxes. There's a lot of stuff I learned on the Terra. And just how this whole setup works and why I think it's a really, for me, it's a really nice setup. Maybe not for you, but I think there may be a few quasi-tutorial videos coming up. And once the show is done, I'm definitely going to do some writing sessions where you can kind of see me coming up with ideas on the fly and just from the ground up. But like I said, for the next couple weeks, I'm going to be focusing on doing a good show. I definitely want to make myself proud and be proud of what I post on YouTube and do a good job for the people that I'm performing for. I mean, they will be paying money to see it. And I don't want to let them or myself down, or you guys either. Definitely, it's a great process, man. I think, yeah, knock yourself out. You should do this. Challenge yourself. It's a lot of work, but whoa, is it a huge confidence builder. All right, y'all, I took up enough of your time. You have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.